Hey everybody, I'm Josh at Populi, and we're going to have a look at ideal billing in Populi. This video is going to be most useful for folks who are still in the process of getting their Populi instance set up for the first time, but there's plenty of information here that anyone who just needs to familiarize themselves with the billing process will find helpful. One thing that we sometimes run into is that Populi users start setting things up without fully comprehending some of the possible automations in the system. But if you cut with the grain of the software, this will end up saving you time. So we understand that this ideal setup for billing might not work for absolutely everyone, but we figure it's better to know how it works and then decide that you don't want to use it than to miss out on the opportunity of using a fairly automated system to create charges for students and deal with your billing process. So first, we're going to do kind of an abstract overview of the process. And what we're overviewing is the most automated way to produce enrollment-based charges for students. That's a carefully constructed sentence because it covers exactly what we're going to look at today. So this is not the only way to produce charges. This is not the only way to produce sort of automated charges. It's the most automated way to produce enrollment-based charges for students. So the overview of the process looks like this. Students receive a program somehow, we'll talk about that later, which gives them a default tuition schedule. Then students enroll in courses, and that causes that tuition schedule to create term tuition charges for them. So if you're set up properly, those 4 steps describe your initial billing process. That's how you're going to get those pending charges generated. So we have a student, they get a program, and then that program has with it a default tuition schedule. So that student now has that default tuition schedule on their profile. Then they enroll in a course or courses, and that creates pending charges. Okay, so that's a real quick overview of what we're talking about. Now we're actually going to go through the workflow in Populi. So we'll go step by step on how you would set this up so you can get an idea of what that actually looks like in the system. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a tuition schedule. The role required to do this is the financial admin role. So you'll need someone at your institution, or maybe you're a power user who has all the roles and is getting things set up, but you'll need this role in order to do this part of the process. So to do this, you'll click on financial at the very top, then you'll go into billing, and then into settings, and then into your tuition schedule tab there. And over to the right there, you're going to click on the Add Tuition Schedule button. That's going to give you the opportunity to set a few things about that. Really, you're just setting the name and the units. That's if you're going to trigger based off of credits or hours, and then the refund policy. So we're just choosing to trigger off of credits, and then we're choosing the standard refund policy, and then we're going to save. So then you'll have that as an option in your table of tuition schedules, and then you'll go down there and click on that new tuition schedule. Okay, so then we get the basics of the tuition schedule. So that's going to have our tuition brackets, and then you'll see below there the course list. What we're going to do now is just go ahead and click into that tuition bracket. We're going to click Edit there, and that will open up this option here. So we're going to be able to set our account. That's just the income account that we want to point this at. These charges are going to come in and they're going to show up in that account. Then we'll set our max credits. So that's we have to have a credit number in there under which we're charging. So you can get fancy with your tuition brackets here. What we're doing as an example today is just to set up a real simple one. So we're setting up max credits at 18 and then a per credit amount of $400. So that means that for all credits in a term that a student enrolls in under 18 credits, they're going to be charged $400 per credit. Okay, and so then all we would do here is save, and then we're good to go. We're going to move on to look at courses there. So we've got the course list. These are all the courses that are currently set to trigger this tuition schedule. Okay, so this defines the courses for which if a student enrolls in a given course, they're going to, the tuition schedule will see that and will create charges based on that. So that's what we're defining here. We're going to click edit there over on the right, and then we're going to open up all of the possible courses that we could add or remove or whatever here. So we're going to remove a couple of courses and then add a couple into the tuition schedule. We're going to add those 2 philosophy courses there into the tuition schedule. Now, we need to attach this tuition schedule to a program, right? Because we have to have the tuition schedule be part of a program so that that program, when that's attached to a student, will bring in this default tuition schedule as well, which we'll talk about more as we go. The role required to do this part of things is the academic admin role. And this all happens over under academics and then programs. We'll go there and then we'll click into the actual undergraduate program. Once we're there, we're going to click on the default tuition schedule there. You can see it already has one, but we're going to edit this and then we're going to change that. So here we're just unchecking that old tuition schedule and then adding this new one on here. And then we're going to save. Okay, so now you can see there that we've got that new default tuition schedule set. So everything's looking good. Okay, now we're going to add that program to a student. The role required for this part of the process is either the registrar or academic admin role. But things are unfortunately a little more complicated, and I do want to run through this. It also highlights kind of one of the benefits of this process. So if you're going in and actually adding programs to students individually, this is the role you would need. But typically, this would happen as part of your admissions process. So if you're using Populi for admissions, you have an application that's bringing students in there, you would be able to define on an application which programs that application serves. So you might have one or more programs there. So when someone applies, they're applying for that program. So that would already be kind of baked into their application. You can see that here. This is just looking at a student's application and looking at the course of study they're on their application. So you can see they've got that undergraduate program selected. Then when you actually go to accept them, you can see this option, the import course of study option there. So when you have that checked and then save as you're accepting this application, that student is getting that program. So this is actually another level of automation. So you don't have to go through potentially manually setting all of these programs for students. They may just receive them as the admissions process is going and students' applications are being accepted. Okay, let's get back on track. We're working on adding programs to students, and we'll walk through that real quick here. So we'll go to a student's profile. You can pull them up in search or however you're going to get to them there. And then we're going to go to their financial tab and then to the dashboard. And I just want to highlight here what's not currently set on this student. This is where a default tuition schedule would show up right here. And there's nothing there currently because we haven't done what we need to do yet. So let's go to do that. To add a program to the student, we're going to click on Student, the Student tab on that profile, and then go to basically you'll land on the transcript, and that will give you the ability to add a program down there. Once you click Add a Program, you choose the exact program. There are other details here. The important thing for our purposes of demonstration is just that you've chosen the same program that you've attached a given default tuition schedule to. So that's the important thing there, and then we're going to save. Okay, so now you can see that that student has that program. Okay, let's then hop over to the financial tab on that profile. into the dashboard there. And you can see down there on the right that now this person has a default tuition schedule. So before they didn't, we added the program. That program pulled in the default tuition schedule to this profile. That's where it ends up. So we've got a program attached to a student, and now that default tuition schedule is there as well. The next step and the last step is to enroll a student in a course that's listed on the tuition schedule if we want to produce those charges there. But before we do that, just a couple of quick things. First, if we go to the student's financial by term tab for the fall term, you can see down there lower that he has no tuition schedule. Okay, so this still doesn't have a tuition schedule here. That's normal, that's as it should be. That tuition schedule on his dashboard, the default tuition schedule there, is still waiting for him to enroll in a course, listening for him to enroll in a course, and then we'll see that populate eventually. Also, another thing, I want to look back at that tuition schedule and we can see the courses listed. So if a student enrolls in any of those courses, those will trigger the tuition schedule. And we're going to enroll the student in this course here so that that's going to trigger the tuition schedule there. Okay, so to do that, we're back on track now. Let's go to the student's profile, to his registration tab. The situation is assuming that the student has a registration tab because online enrollment is open. So we're going to that registration tab, and then we're going to choose that course that's listed over on the tuition schedule, and then that will hopefully trigger the default tuition schedule to make charges. Okay, so then the process from there is just that we're going to save that student. Student could also be walking through this on their own, depending on how you're set up there. Okay. So back on the student tab on that student's profile, we can see that the student is enrolled in that course. Great. And then if we hop over on the student's profile to the financial tab and then into by term, make sure we're looking at the correct term there, that fall 2021 term, we can see a few things. First of all, remember we had an unpopulated tuition schedule on the by term tab before, now it's populated. So that's one thing. Then we also have charges that are generated here. So the charge that was generated is that $800 line item. You can see down under enrollment history there that this course had 2 credits. So we had $400 for 2 credits, $800 charge for that course. Obviously, if you had more courses for the enrollment, you would create a different set of charges. Also, you can see that there is a pending fee there. That's an automatic fee that works in a different way than the tuition schedule. So we're not going to cover any more detail about that, but you should know there are other charges that you can create automatically outside of a tuition schedule. So that's the basic process. Now I want to go back, kind of step through some things. A lot of things will probably be pretty obvious just from what we've looked at here, but I do want to make sure that we're just kind of defining our terms and digging into a couple things. So we're going to take another pass at things here. So remember, students receive a program somehow. Then that program gives them a default tuition schedule. Then the student enrolls in courses, which causes the tuition schedule to create term tuition charges for them. There are a couple of other steps that I would add to this that are less automatic. They're more of an institutional process. Ideally, then, your billing team goes in and checks all these pending charges that have been created, and then they have to manually invoice the charges. And then students pay against those charges once they've been invoiced. So what we saw was the generation of pending charges, which isn't the end of the story. You would ideally go in and check things out, then invoice the charges, and then students are able to pay against those invoice charges. Okay, so now we're going to take a closer look at these first 2 steps here because we want to define a couple of terms. First of all, in Populi, a program refers to a specific class of academic awards. So, for instance, many institutions have undergraduate programs, okay? These are going to be typically a program that contains degrees at the associate's and bachelor's level most typically. So that student might also have a graduate program containing, say, master's academic awards or degrees. So you wouldn't typically in Populi create an English or a nursing program, right? Those would be degrees that exist under a program. So you can see what we're pointing out here. We've got an undergraduate program with 2 different levels of awards, associates and bachelors. Those levels have their own degrees. And then English and nursing would exist at the degree level. It wouldn't be a program, it would be a degree. So that's what we've got there. Those typically are not programs in the technical sense that we're using. Of course, you may refer to your English program or your nursing program, and you're talking about those degrees. That's just not what that means in Populi there. So we're talking about those, say, the graduate level program or the undergraduate level program, and so on. Okay, so the second thing we want to look at is this whole idea of a tuition schedule. You've kind of already seen how that works, but let's pick it apart a little bit here. So the tuition schedule is the basis of automatic tuition charges, okay? And for short, if you need shorthand for tuition schedule, TS. It's a TS. The TS defines the dollars per credit for those enrollments. So the amount per credit that you're charging for enrollments. That is per term, and it is for that set of courses that you define there. We already saw that list of courses. Okay, and then those TSs attached, like we saw, to student profiles at 2 levels. First of all, we saw on financial dashboard on a student's profile that default tuition schedule attaches to the student right there. So that's a broader kind of way that you can attach a tuition schedule to a person. And then under that, you've also got the student's term. So we've got the default tuition schedule attaches to the student, and then we've got the student's term. We can have a term tuition schedule that attaches there. Okay? And remember that tuition schedule, the default tuition schedule, is added by adding that program, just to rehash that. Okay, so then once the student has that default tuition schedule, that tuition schedule is listening for the student to enroll, and then based off of that creates pending charges, which means if the student enrolls in 3 credits and the tuition schedule is set to charge $400 per credit, the student receives $1,200 in pending charges, of course. Okay, so let's cover when this might not work for you. If your tuition schedule is more specific than the program, this setup won't quite work for you. So if you have 2 degrees in the undergraduate program and degree 1 charges $200 per credit and degree 2 charges $400 per credit, then this won't work, okay? Because the default tuition schedule being attached to the program can only really function if that default tuition schedule works for everyone who gets that program. Again, this doesn't mean there's no other way of working around this. It just means that you're going to end up with some manual work here to get those correct tuition schedules to apply to different degrees within the same program. So all is not lost, but you're going to need to think through how you want that process to work. So students in each degree, if they need different tuition schedules, this process, the way we've described it here, doesn't work for you. Also, if you don't charge per term, one of the things in our definition there is that these charges are created per term. So if you don't charge per term, some folks charge for the entire year right up front, regardless of specific enrollments, things like that, then this isn't going to work for you because you need to have those charges constrained to a term in order to generate them automatically here. So tuition schedules can only create automatic charges on a per term basis. And of course, these were the main things that we came up with as we're working through creating this, this video here. but there could be other things outside of that. So you would just want to think through your process and maybe ask some questions about how that would apply. Again, if this does not work for you, it means that things will be less automated, but there's still lots of other options. And we'll probably be able to cover some of those things in other videos. So remember, our goal was to describe the most automated way to produce enrollment-based charges for students. So that's what we looked at here. Let's real quickly just recap a few of those things. I know we've gone over it, but if you've hung on this long, maybe you need it. I don't know. So if you're set up properly, those 4 steps describe your initial billing process that we talked about. And that's how you're going to generate those pending charges. You've got a student, you get into a program, they get a default tuition schedule, they enroll in a course, that creates pending charges, and that is the end. So that should do it. If you're able to use that ideal process, you'll be ready to go here if you get those things set up and functioning. Thanks for watching to the end. Even though I'm the teacher, for watching to the end, you get a shiny red apple. Also, make sure that you go ahead to our YouTube channel. I want you to subscribe over there and then click that bell for alerts, ding, ding, ding. Get those alerts so that when we post a new video, you get notified. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye.